Yeah, so stream has started, I think. Yeah. Okay, cool. And we will talk about my concept of facing today that is mirrored by a bunch of people who have passion projects around like cognition, I guess, but isn't, as far as I know, like uh, I don't know, like there's no stream mainstream in any even like subculture that I know that really does this. Like there's some quantum physics that I'm learning about that thinks things are relational, but I think they're really kind of just not on the same ideas that I am. But yeah, I'm into weird theoretical stuff, but it's for the sake of it being recursively stable. Recursive as in you could also think of it as what's that word? Tessellating kind of. It's a little bit different than that, but basically the instructions can become more complex because they're stable at a very simple level, and more complexity tends to make it more stable, not unstable. So that's what we're arguing for, is that we need to understand what's recursive in our existence, so then it should work in our interpersonal relationships, it should work in our minds, it should work subatomically. And that's this concept of facing, where if you're using doing as arriving language, you will think that you need to compete with people to arrive at a point, instead of what I think we should do, which is to find points that will also face us. That there is no point to arrive at. If you try to arrive at a point, you're trying to seek someone to destroy, because there is, like, if you give points agency, like you treat them as agents, then there's no where to go except to relate. And your relating is kind of weird, because you should think of yourself like not really moving but able to rotate and face infinite points. Um, and then the weird thing about that is like the physics gets funky from there, but for now it's fine. I'm going to work on that later. Um, what I'm saying is that, okay, how do I explain this? Hold on. Okay, let me give you the image in my head. So what you should think about is a point that has 60 directions it can face. And then that point is almost touching 60 other points that could face in 60 directions. So like that's a starting, but it gets even denser than that. So when that happens, because there's only points, there's no faces, there's no lines, there's no physical matter that can block the points from facing each other, right? Um, so your point is able to look not just 60 directions, but infinite directions. As long as there's a point there to meet you, you then can do facing. So we live in such a complex universe, you might as well think of your facing as infinite, even if technically speaking, if I just look around the room, it's not super infinite, but it's also inside of your head. So if I face a point in my room, I also am consolidating facing a point inside of my own skull that is in the past. So I'm like, this is where it gets super weird and it's hard to visualize. But like if you simplify it as how do I put this? Okay. You can face the things inside of your mind, and then you become a new thing facing the things outside of your mind. So if two things face, a new thing appears, or a new thing becomes possible. So when you face something, a new thing becomes possible. That's where it gets a little bit wonky. But if you did this inside of your own head, like you face something in the world in front of you, like a new thing. This is why I'm doing the new thing, old things, all things. Then you after facing this, which has now changed you into a new thing. Now you're a new thing. With as that you face the old things in your mind. Now another third thing happens, and that's the all things. And then the all things is going to face the world and decide what you want to interact with. Okay, and then we have some amount of arriving at that point where you actually might move towards something physically, but the physically moving towards things is not that significant. It's very uh, it's very secondary to, now that I'm in this new place, I can face new stuff. I now can see different things, and the process will happen again. So to try to get people involved in that process is going to be hard, because I know it's there because I've looked at enough points around it that I can infer it's something like this. I haven't faced this point directly enough, because I haven't faced the points necessary for me to find where that other point is and for it to find me. So for something to face you, it's kind of like game recognized game. Like, you also have to be faceable. So you have to be like kind of resonant with the concepts that are required in order to see this finally. So to perceive it means, and to have attention on it means, you need to know enough related things to then be related to it. So it's relational in that, like, the related thing can't see you until you've looked enough at the related things to the thing you'd like to see. So it's super, like, this is weird. And like, it makes me feel a lot better, because I'm like, oh, well, of course we haven't figured this out yet. Look at how ridiculous it is me trying to even explain this at this point. That's why philosophers didn't go in this direction, quote unquote direction. This is hard. But the simple side of it is, like, the instructions are very clear. Face things. So like, literally look at them, and then know that when you look at something, it changes you. So one thing, two thing, third new thing. That third new thing is going to go into your memory or your imagination, make another third new thing, and then that third new thing is going to look back out into the world and figure out what it now needs to face. So you're more like a compass, like a weird, freaky compass. But you're not the only weird, freaky compass. If this argument is true, then even like tiny, weird, funky particle compasses will also face you, and that's why waves collapse into particles when observed. Right? Ah! Ooh, I love your new name. That's radical. I love it. Okay. Very rad. Okay, so that's facing. And then let's see, what else do I want to say about it? There's something else I wanted to say. We're in a really bad situation for a facing universe, or facing reality, because facing is supposed to do reality testing. Like, that's what reality testing is when you face some things, you understand the features of them, and now they resonate with you, and now you can find those features in other more complex forms, or even simpler or neglected forms. You can find the game recognizes game feeling. But we are not doing that. It is atrophying, and we are being led by people who have tried to, like, kill the face inside of themselves, like the facing inside of themselves. They do not want to change. They don't want to change. And facing is a process of being changeable and changed. And when you don't change, you die. Okay, so that's how our universe works. If you don't change, you will die, and you will change anyway, but not as a living thing. So it sounds super, like, philosophically goofy on some level, but I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm talking about physics. And all of our relationships are not these stories we tell ourselves. It's this physics relationship playing out over and over again at increasing levels of complexity. And if we do not get our brains to be able to think this way, we will die. Like, that's what I think is going to happen, because we can't stabilize the amount of things that we've now introduced that have to change us. If we do not change at this point, then we will change into matter that is inert for us to think from. Like, we won't be able to think anymore because our species won't be around. The matter will still keep changing and moving around, but we will no longer participate in it if we don't do this all the way at the level of our minds. Like, we have to be participatory at this point. It is our responsibility to be participatory in the process of facing, because if we try to not face with this like computing, if we want to call it that, power in our mind, we will not survive. It's too necessary for life itself, and now we are able to like face on purpose or not. And I mean, if people want to call that free will, I don't know, whatever. If they need to redeem that concept, I don't even care at this point. But like, if I can't explain this yet, that's okay. I'm going to have to try, though, because if we don't get this, we're in so much poop, and it's going to be miserable, and we'll be miserable because we'll be unstable. And fundamentally, we're stable because of facing, and what will happen is we will just become particles that face in some other way, because we are not stabilizing it with our minds now at this level of complexity. So yeah, that's the only, and it's not even that hard. Just like, face other people, relate to them, tell them what you see, have them tell you what they see, and like, stay until you figure it out. And if someone's honestly doing that with you, you will eventually figure it out, and you can walk away for a little while and be like, I think I need to go read a book. A lot of people say that to me. That's a super smart thing to say to someone like me. Like, I think I got to go study some stuff. Dope. Amazing. But that's you then picking up on the feeling of like, oh, when I talk to this person, I can't reflect back what some of their ideas are. I don't relate to them yet. So you have to go relate to the ideas, because I can't teach you everything that I know in my mind. That's not how learning works. Because you need to relate things to what you've been exposed to. So you're the only one who can know that, like how to jump from one relationship to the other. So if it's hard to think about, great, that's how it should feel. If you are not feeling like something's kind of hard and overwhelming to think about, then you're not doing the relating process. You have to feel frustrated. That is the signal that we are doing it. As far as I can tell, in the human body. Maybe it feels a little bit different for different people. I would describe it as frustration. But like, I don't know. That's sort of where I'm going with this. It's really dense, but if we can just start thinking about it, that's all you need to do, and then face people and try to talk about it. And if there's people you can't face and talk about it for very long, that's fine. I think probably at this point we just have to face absolutely everybody and say something that will resonate with them, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. So I've gotten through to a couple of people that I didn't think I would even get through to in a tiny way, and that's all I need to do. Like, I don't need to then take them the rest of the way, because I'm not taking them anywhere, because we don't go anywhere. We just face. So if I can face them and be like, yep, okay, makes sense. If you can face me back, here's the challenge. You can face me back, cool. Well, then it's up to this person to face me again, and if I'm able to face them again, I will. So you can't force someone to face you. And that's what people think is like normal, to try to force people to face you. You cannot do that. Kindness is attractive, is what Mr. Rogers was saying. I think kindness is facing, and it's attractive if you're ready to be kind with someone, to also face and try to learn how to face, and then face, and then face. So facing is my term for it. Maybe there'll be a different one, but it works for me because it also absorbs the concept in physics of like points, vertices, and a face. I'm like, the face isn't real. Like, planes aren't real. Like, planes feel real because there's enough points for you to feel like it's a plane, but it's not real. Like, there's not a solid surface that's flat. That's not real. There are particles that are in relationship, and if you go down to like the subatomic level, it actually is little stupid triangles. God damn it. We don't want to think about it that way, which pisses me off at this point, because I'm like, Buckminster Fuller was right. But I'll stop my monologue in a second, I swear. If we can understand that the relationships can be how we orient ourselves, instead of trying to think we're going somewhere with it, or trying to have somebody follow us, or any of that, forget that. Just do the facing thing, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. Just do that. And don't worry about the next moment that you're going to have to face someone. Like, you can use your imagination and face things inside of your mind. You can face your past in your mind. But in terms of like the actual reality you live in, just face. Just do that. Your mind will do the backlog processing of like your memories and your imagination. It won't shut up. Like, look at all the stories we've written. We cannot stop doing it. So that's autopilot. And just like face someone and see if they'll face you back. um yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so that's I'll stop now, but that's the concepts I'm working on.
I just had the idea that I think I think a lot of people maybe don't, or they feel afraid of continuously facing, because in their mind they might think that, or religion teaches people that um like there is a definite point to arrive at. There is something
Yeah.
beneath all of it that's like the one singular like framework, right?
Hmm.
And that's what I'm coming to understand, that there actually isn't anything like that, and that the complexity is infinite in its branching.
Yeah.
So
And
ultimately, you just do the facing, because that's just all you do.
yeah, that's all you do. And if you want to feel like there's something more profound, when you face enough things, the interior of you will get more profound. So you will discover whatever you thought religions was going to give you inside of yourself. If you face other things, other facing agents, when you face each other, you will become more complex internally, and that complexity must agree with the rules of the universe you live in. If you allow yourself to change and become more complex, you will make more sense. Okay? Because the only thing that can allow for complexity to remain stable, I'm saying, are these relationships that are themselves stable, like recursively inwards, downwards, simpler, right? So
Mm.
whatever those religions were promising, it's this is why the Wizard of Oz is kind of a genius story. It's like it's already inside of you, and if you face your fears, if you face the things that you think you cannot do, you will discover this information builds inside of you. So there's a difference between performing and building, right? Like if they want you to perform something to then be given an external trophy, what are you supposed to do with the trophy? That's why the trophy becomes more and more meaningless. That's why money is becoming meaningless. It doesn't make any sense because it's not about a deep understanding that was established through relationships. You just showed up at a place and then we're given something that's supposed to be meaningful. It's supposed to say that, oh, I as another builder recognize your building. And then we can do amazing things. They want to be able, the people that are arriving out, they want to be able to do amazing things, but they have no internal structure for that to be possible. They've only performed being the person that gets the amazing things trophy, and there's no amazing things. So it's collapsing. Um, and
I think it's like
yeah,
there's like this prevailing thing in like Western thought, where they try to reduce everything to like the mind, and so they just think that anything can be like collapsed and reduced into a construct of like what that complexity is and how you can relate to it, instead of like lots of other factors to do with biology and the body and all sorts of other disciplines, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Well, that's the problem I have with our universities. Yes, and like the topics that I'm going off of are from different fields, different people from different fields who I think are talking about the same thing. But I didn't have anyone telling me you can't relate to that person because you're not in their department. Even though if you just walk across the stupid campus, like I have been saying forever, and these people just actually had lunch together, they'd realize that a lot of them are working on the same thing. But their passion projects is where they get to express about this, and I go and read their passion projects. I'm like, hey, you're probably right, but you're not just talking about biology, you're not just talking about physics, you're not just talking about philosophy.
Well, it's kind of like, I guess, some people, different academies, different faculties might think that, well, this person who's, I don't know, coming from philosophy and I'm in biology or whatever, they can't speak to me about like these biological matters. They can't claim that there's like a connection in like there's a connected pattern between like the things that we're observing, because my thing, my discipline, my perception like accounts for so much more. And like they like almost like there's like this feeling that like I've got no gaps in my thing, because my model is apparently like it's the bottommost, it's the singular most thing that underpins that complexity, which is obviously not true. But I think a lot of academics maybe think that way.
Well, I mean, they would because they got a trophy. So they'll go up to somebody like, "Do you have your trophy?" And if the person says no, they're like, "Oh, well, the trophy is how I know that I can relate to you. So you clearly have nothing for me to relate to," and then they don't face. So it's telling people not to face each other because it's a waste of
I
quote
agree.
unquote time.
Although on the one hand, like I did wonder whether like are some parts of the complexity of existence better, like some things are they better explained through like psychology, some things are better explained through neuroscience, some for philosophy. And maybe there is like an element to like where we recognize um like somebody in that field is going to be better explaining certain things, but that is just only like one branch out of an infinite number of branches, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
there, there'll be no case where having the knowledge of both isn't better,
Mhm. There we go.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Right. Well, actually, true. But then, so this is what I've heard, like some academics, some scholars, right? I've heard similar things like, oh, our discipline was pure. And then these people came in and they like, it's like almost like they cross-contaminated our discipline with like these things that don't match up, right? And there have no like proper, foundation or grounds to be like applied. And like these principles shouldn't be introduced to our thing. And they've ruined it. And now
So,
people have this, yeah,
so outside of like doing chemistry, the concept of pure is hogwash that makes people not face each other.
Mhm.
true.
Right. Because when you face, you change, right? And they don't want to be sullied, or it's like a disgust response, right? They don't want to be
Mhm.
changed and made impure. They don't want to be changed and made
Well, and so
disgusting
then
to
it's
their
a
peers.
and then it's a hierarchy response,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes,
They
yes,
don't want to drop hierarchy.
yes.
Oh, so this ties into
So
the
when they say
age-old.
that their discipline used to be pure, they're saying their discipline used to sit atop a hierarchy.
Mhm.
This ties to the idea of like like nostalgia, going back to like this golden age in the past when
Hmm.
things were better. So that's right. That's hierarchical.
Yep.
This invented golden age. It's important to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. None of that's real. And the invented golden age is also, it's some sort of an inner ring that was secure and then stopped being secure because they're not secure. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, remember when the unstable thing briefly appeared stable to us? I'm like, uh-huh. So you want to be unable to tell that something's unstable. Okay. That's not a solution to anything.
Well, and like psychiatrically, psychologically, it seems like a lot of the golden age is just the last days you remember before puberty came along.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That
Yes.
the years that people think of the golden age are when they were like 10 to 12. It tends
Right.
to be, yeah.
That
That's when
makes
the best TV was on and the world wasn't complicated and so on and so on because
And the
their inner world wasn't complicated yet.
right.
and it's
And
strange that
yeah.
they don't remember the negative memories of that. They always remember just the positives.
Well, they've been also been told that complexity is bad instead of complexity is time itself and unavoidable, and that you must try to like how do I put this? You must become complex enough yourself for the complexity to be uh, remembered,
Mm,
because it happened whether you remember it or not.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, you're right. I think a lot of the world is, well, allergic to that. I'm reminded of, yeah, like my own family, friends. It's just the usual like response or impulse of like, it's like you needlessly make things too complicated. You're philosophizing about things. I always just found that strange because it's just like the complexity of things became apparent. Like there's like paradoxes within things, right? There's things where they branch off and you have questions, like you're curious about like where things go, but they just
Yes.
apparently that's frustrating to people. Yeah.
Yes. And well, they're scared of how it feels. So I think people are actually scared and simulating disgust from others when they start to feel that complexity is necessary inside of their own thinking. They're like, "Oh no, is this bad?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's alarming. That's an existential risk for our species if we believe that it's bad when we have the sensation like from our affect of, oh, it's time to have our complexity increase so that we can remember the complexity that is happening to us and has been happening to us." Okay, so if your response to this, the realization that that's happening, is to think it's going to kill you, you will try to stop doing it. And that's where we're at right now.
This is almost kind of like a bit of a segue from a book that I started reading called Necropolitics. Don't know if you heard about it by
I have not.
this Cameroonian sociologist, I think, Akili Mbembe. And like it's interesting, specifically like life and death, and this like the idea of death and dying that is like seen as bad and ties into like the whole morality thing, that it's evil and so it's pushed out, and then this the inner ring outer ring thing kind of ties back to um trying to control like life and death, right? And then when you're in the in group, right, the idea of sovereignty according to Achilles is like being able to choose who lives and who dies, and then you push all of the death on like the people that you don't like, right, on the out group.
Yeah.
And actually, I learned about this idea, you see, a little from it was an Elden Ring creator, right? And they connected that whole book maps into the story of Elden Ring, but then it actually maps into, obviously you can see it in everywhere in human history and everything. It's just politics of death. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we are afraid of death, which that's I also don't want to die. Okay, like that's a pretty
Same.
cool thing to not want to do, right? Like I get it. However, okay, let me not cost is the right, that's not the right word because that's the system that we're having problems with. Okay, the only way for you to live as a human with this level of complexity is to do this process of allowing yourself to change to be as complex as possible internally, and we need as many people as possible to do that. So if anyone says like this feels hard or bad, then you're like, okay, well, try anyway. Like, oh well, like shrug. Like, so your fear of death should be channeled into trying to face, okay? Because that's the only solution. Because we're now so complex that we can die in a dumb number of ways. Like, it's ridiculous. If you think about ways that other organisms can die versus all the complex ways we can, we need to know a lot to not die. And you cannot build a fortress around you to make death not take you out. All they're doing is making it less likely for them to die.
But that's precisely what are the powers that be are doing.
Right. They're making themselves less likely to die from certain things at this stage of complexity. And I told you that time is complexity. So they're going to not be able to not die from the next layer of complexity that's all actively happening. So the only way for them also to not die as much is for everybody to not die as much. Because then we have figured out ways to not die as much collectively through our being as complex as possible inside of our brain and our organism. We need to, the thing we should be happy about is our bodies are not changing radically, so we can have some stabilizing forces there. We have some stability in our body that we should be trying to make more stable. We shouldn't be trying to protect ourselves against the inevitable complexities that come from a complex system interacting at denser levels of complexity. We have to stabilize what is stable, and the things that are not stable, we have to stabilize as well. They are not doing that. They are not stabilizing what is stable. They are destabilizing it. and it's destructive because the people that can help them need to be trained in the skills that we currently have to prevent death, and they can't afford to get trained, and they're not going to want to put their efforts towards not their loved ones or themselves, but towards a dickhead who doesn't know how to help anyone. So these are people who are, I think, sociopaths or psychopaths. I think they're broken. I think their brains are broken. And we cannot leave them in power. We literally cannot do that anymore. Now, how do we get them out? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it sounds to me like they're doing it. I mean, again, it goes back to the hierarchy, the golden age, that they're trying to maintain their hierarchical position of power in an old system, and then change is inevitable. I mean, it's like the story of like Kronos, right? All over again, tries to stop his reign from ending, even though it's certain. And yeah.
Well, and even beyond that, like if they had been okay on a certain level, it doesn't matter if people did this before or not. On a certain level, I'll explain where I'm going with this. Because the behavior itself is unstable. So on some level, I'm like, I don't even care how they got there at this time. They need to stop doing it. If we do not have a collective understanding that we have to be so much more intelligent than everybody in power, and by intelligent, I mean we have to have this internal complexity, which means we have to face other people, which means we have to be embarrassed that we don't know sometimes and we aren't able to face some people that we want to be able to face. We have to do that. We have to embarrass ourselves. I don't care anymore. I'm going to run around embarrassing myself, trying to talk to quote unquote experts, right? I don't care anymore because this is so, I think I have the complexity and I need to find anybody anywhere that can face me even for a second to pass this forward, because we need to have this stability start to come in. So think of it this way. We have three-dimensional space and everyone's kicking out one of the legs of the triangle. Okay? Or the tetrahedron. That tetrahedron is going to fold. So we need to make sure that no one's trying to kick out one of the legs of the tetrahedron, one of the relationships. Okay.
It's like passing on the torch. In
yes,
sense
yes.
yeah.
Passing on like 5,000 torches a day if you can. And that's the best solution I have right now. But it will get better because I'm still working on the complexity inside of myself. And one of the reasons I'm doing that, it's not just passing on the torch. It lights the torch inside of me in the internal recursion of it, right? So I'm not static and I'm not giving something away. What I'm doing is reestablishing relationships that are then interstellar highways of information. That if those aren't open, the complexity of my mind cannot increase to deal with the complexity of our species and how deadly this environment is because we can't deal with it. So the environment is deadly because we can't deal with it.
That's what ensures that you're alive.
Yes, it does. It does. It has kept me alive. It has kept me from despair. I'm trying to keep alive in other ways that the system is going to start messing with me because of the money. Because you can't afford to take care of your fucking body. It's insane to me that this is where we're at. Like, it's insane. So,
But it doesn't sound like anything new. Like, I've seen things like this play across history so many times.
It's so much worse, though. Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So, it's not the same as what happened, because it's so much more complex now that, like, this could get so complex that in a matter of weeks, we're all dead. Like, we all blow up. Like,
but it'll never be impossible to keep climbing, yeah.
Well, the idea is, okay, if we can practice facing, right, that will also spread quickly because it's stabilizing, and stable things feel much better for us. But we have to understand that looking for that stability will feel bad because things are really, really bad. So when you look, not a lot of things are going to face back to you. And instead, you'll see a lot of things collapsing. Okay? So when you look, you'll see a lot of collapse. You have to be able to become more complex from looking at that. Even looking at that, even though it's not facing back to you because you've internalized facing, you now can face something inside of yourself that will face you back to deal with the void, the abyss. You know what I mean? The grotesqueness of the destruction. Yes.
I can definitely agree with you.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to trust in that this principle is stable and is inside of yourself, that we are a kind of species that generates a virtualization of it inside of our mind that we call memory and imagination, yada yada. Okay, so you've got that, it's there, and it needs to get as good as it can be. And even though humans don't know how to make it as good as it can be, I'm saying that it's so simple because it's so stable and successful that really what you need to do is face with this simple set of instructions that I'm trying to get simpler. And the more complex I get, the easier it's going to be for me to do that and explain it to you. And maybe the next time I explain it, it'll hit harder. But you can hear even I've progressed, right? Like I've changed, progressed, that's a bad word. I've changed, I've become more complex. So that's what we need, because we have so many people afraid to do that right now that they are not learning how to face in an environment that is collapsing. And the only way for this to become stable again is to do this. And it is
right for us to like almost lead by example, I guess.
Well, and it's not. Don't think that it's contagious. So like when people see the complexity in you, and you seem to be okay, they want to be okay. So if you face them, and they're having a moment of doubt that what they've been doing of never facing anything, like where they finally face you, you can give them a chance to see the complexity in you. And the complexity in them is the only thing that can see it. Okay? So you're affirming the complexity is inside of their own mind. And now they have confidence. And now they can start to do it on purpose.
I just realized that they, just like myself, at moments, you won't have somebody that's, let's say, like has a greater depth of complexity than you do, right? You will have to face something alone, you could say.
Yeah.
And that's where like sort of like the test, the scary bit kind of comes in. But I guess it's, as you say, it's about having faith in that this model is going to it's funnily enough, I remember this quote from the Bible, I think from the Romans does, I think, apply. It's like, whosoever shall believe in him shall be delivered, or something like that. And if you apply that to yourself, in a sense, like if you believe that you'll get through it, you will, sort of a thing.
With regards to this specific feeling. So the specific feeling, you have to know you can handle it. So you can handle feeling like you're stupid or whatever we might internalize that, or you're not good enough.
It's the fear of death. It's I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to my health's going to deteriorate. Things like that.
Yes, because people will not see me as worth facing, so they won't preserve me. They will let me destabilize and collapse. Okay, so that's why the fear of death. We do need each other to be to not die. Okay? Yes, correct. Great. Good. That is just reality. So it's like a fear of what you in fact are, which is a relationship being expressed that will get more complex, and you are a kind of relationship that is particularly dense because you have relationships that are virtualized inside of your mind that are also interacting with the relationships in the material world that you directly interact with your body physically. But you also have a physical brain, and it is also creating something through memory. So we remember how to face and relate, but the argument is everything has that kind of memory. Like that's what memory actually is that facing and relationship thing being encoded into an organism on some level, that it knows how to face again, that it knows when it is facing. So if we're afraid of knowing when we are facing or knowing that we will face again, we will die. Does that make sense?
I mean, you'll have less you'll have less experience as a result, because you will have faced less things, so therefore like you won't know how to respond to a new situation, a new complexity that arises, right? And I guess that's what decides why some species or even empires, for example, have collapsed into extinction, right?
Yes.
Because they didn't do that.
And the only reason things exist is because they remember how to face. Like it's so fundamental that if something doesn't remember to face, or doesn't remember that it did face, it will not face again, and it will no longer exist.
That's why whenever there's like tough times, and it's always the same thing people always say, like, oh, if you don't learn from the lessons of the past. But it's true. Yeah, it's nobody usually, well, it seems like nobody learns, right?
They want to learn cyclically. That's the problem. They want to learn cyclically. They want to learn the same lesson over and over again. That's not it. You have to become more complex. As more lessons appear, you need to be able to solve for all of that and the layers that weren't obvious even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or especially 50. So you need to be so complex that you understand these problems even more fully every time you look at them. That's all. Like, then, and that should be fun. It should feel good. If somebody doesn't want to be that, then they don't want to be, period. That is what being is, especially if you're a human. I'm sorry, this is what we got. Like, if you want to have all the cool stuff we get to make, you have to accept that this is what you are. That you are a complexity engine. And you only, that not only you, all reality is a complexity engine. You are a complexity engine that is like ridiculous. And you need to accept that you just have to keep being as complex as you possibly can, and that to not be, or to for someone to stop that is basically like a form of violence. Okay? Yeah. Yikes, that's a lot. I don't care. We need to be complex enough to deal with the fact that that's a lot. We can even still have a sense of humor about it. I'm trying to model that too. This is heavy. This is a big deal.
I think humor is perfect. Humor and harmony, like that's what's necessary to break the tension, right?
Yeah.
That sort of builds up because of this.
Exactly. But the best humor is super complex. Because it's like it's letting you
that points out the incongruencies and the complexities, of what we experience. I think all humor is based on pointing out what is incongruent in our lives, right?
Well, in what is what should I say? Relationships that are kind of funny, because when you think about enough relationships at the same time that like they're truly related, right? They truly have facing. But it's funny because this faces that, let's say X also faces Y, but X also faces A. Okay, so let's say Y is something really regal and like the Buddha. Okay, so X faces the Buddha, but X also faces what's a good one? Let me think of this. Lucille Ball. Perfect. And then if we understand like why X can face both of those things, it's hilarious. Because like then you have a real relationship. It's not that it isn't there, but it's made by how most of the things that face either of those two tend to be different. But there's in some ways they are not different. And that's hilarious. Like that's delightful. That's a surprise. Good comedy is kind of surprising.
We can laugh at ourselves in being embarrassed because we thought they were different when they weren't.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's interesting. It's amusing. We're like, oh, that's fun. I'm suddenly very interested in that. I never noticed that before.
I think that's why for me, like, I got into Taoism quite heavily, I think, because of this. The Shuangzi, it's sort of like, it's supposed to be satirical comedic text. And I think a lot of both thinkers, academics, but just obviously ideologies and philosophies, they, in taking out the humor and then the observation of incongruence of the complexity of what life is, they just sterilize everything, and then just the tension sort of becomes insane.
Well, they destabilize it. So that's what I'm saying. The stability. Yeah. They kicked out one of the legs.
Right. It's kind of like, they don't want people laughing at the king, right? They don't want people. They don't like the gesture. They didn't get the message that you're not supposed to kill the gesture, right?
Right.
Like he's there for a reason.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Anyways, so let me look at my agenda for a second. The old things. Sorry, hold on. Okay, so the quiet practice of rotating attention instead of chasing improvement. So rotating attention is like a big part of this facing thing, is that you can rotate your attention, and then you can also go internally, right? And then feeling ready not as arrival, but as a moment of honest orientation. So like you feel ready because you're really facing it. Okay, so you feel, and so the reason why I have the new things, old things, all things do things, because time exists. And I'm saying the best way for us to work with the kind of brain we have is, in my argument, if you already accept that I'm correct about this triangle structure, like tetrahedral structure eventually. Okay. You need to take in what's currently happening and then immediately go into your brain and let it change the complexity. So new things, old things, you're now checking, and then the all things is the synthesis that allows it all to change. And now you move. Now you can move. So there's 2 times that you will orient. The first like swivel rotation, attentional rotation, will be to take in the new things. Then you stay and you let the old things connect to it and relate to it. Then you stay and let the all things synthesis happen, and then you relate back out to the world again. And you may relate at the second time at almost the same point, but it's not, because you stayed, time passed, and you are physically no longer in the same place because you're on an earth that rotates and everything. You know, see what I'm saying? So even if you look at the same point, it has changed. And it has changed also because you allowed the interiority of yourself to change. Now, you may also immediately look at a different point. It doesn't really matter at this point, and start again. I would suggest
your axis is shifted. Your axis
Yeah.
is shifted as well.
I would suggest, because we're humans, probably stick on the same point at the end of the do things process for a second, and then allow yourself to kind of move a little bit, but know that you're going to have to do another new things, old things, all things, do things the next thing you look at. And you have to be like, if you get super complex and this slows us down, it just can't matter anymore. Like, you just have to move slow as shit. I don't care. Like, and probably you won't. Like, you'll probably speed up, because some things you'll just already understand the relationship, so you can kind of glide through it.
I can tell you it's still very slow right now, but I think it's just like there's this understanding that sometimes the slow path is the fast path, because it is what you have to go through, right?
Yeah.
To get to the new thing.
Correct. And think of it as it's use a way instead of a path, because it's more flexible. Like, you can, when people say go the right way, they can mean using a path. So then, but if you say way, it also allows you to talk about a process simultaneously. So try switching path for way for now, so then you have a chance to
Okay.
decouple that from just automatically taking you to doing as arriving.
I have a phrase for you. Slow means smooth. Smooth means fast. Slow means smooth. Smooth means fast.
Will you write that down for me?
Put it in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'm definitely kind of going through this process right now, and I can tell you that it's, yes, very slow, because I'm sort of feeling I thought that it was a dissolution to like all of my, well, pretty much all of my paradigms, what I kind of understood of myself and the world, and it's partially that, but as you say, it's connecting to the new things. New things are sort of cycling in how they wish, and like I'm almost partially waiting for lateral connections sometimes to be made to come in. It depends. It's a really sort of funky process right now.
Yeah.
And it does feel scary sometimes, because then like sometimes I just feel like you're adrift. You're like searching for that axis, but then I kind of couch myself. I'm like, no, wait, it's fine. It's stabilizing. I just need to let it do its thing, and I'll get there.
You will become more stable by doing this. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that has told people that they will become less stable by doing this. Or they label this as things that it's not, that are unstable, arguably. And then I have to argue with people. I'm like, nope, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you to do this. And that's why I ended up first, I believe, with doing as arriving, doing as building. Because I was just, that is clearly what's happening, is they're like locked into, are you going to make me do as in DUE and do as arrive? And I'm like, no, that is not what I'm going to make you do. And then they're like, but I'm going to try to make you do it. I'm like, oh shit. Like, so it's a problem right now where people have been conditioned to think them moving through space is the metaphor to use, and it's simply not. Like, it's just that metaphor is missing too much, and
It's not complex enough. It's very
yes,
simplistic, right?
yeah. Well, and it's simplistic is fine if we were at the start of the universe, but we're no longer at the start of the universe, so no longer can we work with that level of complexity being so. We just aren't there. How now? So if you do want something really simple, then you can say, what is the structure of the universe? But then people say, well, that's too complex. You see how that's wrong? Like, no, that's not too complex. That's exactly where you need to be, and you have to believe that you can see something that complex as simple. Does that make sense? So, like,
Yeah,
you
it
need to
does.
be
Yeah.
complex enough that it becomes kind of simple for you because you mirror that complexity.
Yeah, and you have to well, it's, as you say, facing it and letting it slowly sort of synthesize when it does.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, you can't force it. It's not almost down to you, to like your singular quote unquote free will to create that, to sort of, to arrive to that point. There is no point to arrive, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually, it's like I said, this is very relevant. I was like listening to a documentary on by Zoe B, an educator, if you know about her. She was doing one on how meritocracy is a lie, and another one, it was by, I think it was what's his name, Robert Spakowski. His thing on, like, determinism and sort of critique on free will. And so, yeah, I think like this again just is another way of saying all of that you've been saying, which is that people sort of get boggled down in the doing is arriving, or this notion of this individual sovereign free will idea of, like, it is all just down to you and this personal choice, and everything else that happens around you is only ever that, and not the operant conditions and the environmental conditions of, that are infinitely complex, that kind of all add together to make you who you are in the moment. But a lot of people still believe in the sort of notions of, oh, if you just try hard enough, if you think about the right things, you'll get to the things that you want and to, like, a better world. And it's interesting because studies, like, were coming out, and they said that the more scarcity there is in a society, and the tougher it is to sort of survive, then apparently, like, meritocratic thought becomes even more ingrained, and ironically even more ingrained in people in the lower cohorts, of economic influence or whatever.
Right. How much of sometimes I think about it, of how much is that kind of a coping mechanism, because
Yeah,
I think it
it's
kind of
it is. It
it
is. Yeah.
staves off. I think it kind of staves off the pondering of this impending calamity or impending doom with
Mhm.
it is kind of like a thought terminating cliche where it's like, oh, for example, like the economy is such and such way that I don't envision having enough money to be in retirement. I'm concerned that I'm going to be working basically until the day I die. And it's like, well, that's far away. Just try hard really right now, and that's all you can do. Da, 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 da. And it's kind of a thought terminating cliche. And it's like, well, it does seem that the current trajectory is leading me towards this outcome unless something changes. I would like something to change, but the current trajectory doesn't seem to be working. And it's kind of like, oh, well, then just, do this thing. And it's like that is that it's not even necessarily provable in every case to have worked. And maybe we're missing some other solution, when we're just saying that that's the only solution is to, I don't know, just do all that stuff.
It's
So I like the word methodical because
Mhm.
it kind of, to me, it kind of dispels the concept of trying to arrive at a destination, because it's more methodical, kind of more implies like the immediate next step, the immediate next step, the immediate next step, and not just the step because it's the next step, but the relationship to this next piece that's being added, or this next alteration of the pieces that are assembled, and the reasons for why that piece was there for the pieces that were there before, and that the pieces that are, or the methods that are going to happen next, as opposed to just start doing stuff at random.
Yeah, I agree, Kyle. I think it's just like, yeah, people are looking for a method, right? Just, I guess, a simpler method to be like an easy solution, perhaps. It's definitely a coping mechanism, though. Yeah.
And then I lost some people, but that's okay. I think
Thank
it's
you.
all right. Okay, so let's see. What time is it? It's like 1:30.
Also Father's Day, so who knows how many people are doing Father's Day stuff.
Okay. Oh, somebody had to run to the shops. Okay, that's all right. I was like, did I kick you? Oh no. I mean, I did not. Okay, good.
Kick everyone.
I don't want to kick anyone.
I couldn't talk at first. I have a kitten chewing on my mic on the back of my chair right now.
Oh, that's cute.
My
The
house
feline
is still
contribution.
chaos. Yeah. It's Cheddar, by the way, Kyle.
Nice.
So it is
Cheddar
a
is here.
Always.
Funnily enough, I noticed that our Cheddar in the group is left.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
But
all right.
yes. We will always have Cheddar as a mascot over here.
Cat mascots are good. Balances out my one dog mascot.
I mean, there's
the irony of what this made me think of, like, if you folks have watched that Puss in Boots film, The Last Wish, right? I mean, Puss looks like Cheddar, but then the movie itself is all about facing death, and actually, I feel like it's a very good film for kind of describing some of the things that Jane just talked about.
Oh, that's good.
I have not seen that, no.
I really like that movie. I think it's very nice.
That's awesome.
I figured you must have seen it with how much you use.
I used to, yes. Just watch it for yourself. I think you'd see why I said that. Oh, it's a very, like, doing is building,
Nice.
facing the complexity of life.
Nice.
Yeah.
We need that. Yeah. So I'm at a weird place where, like, I went to the protests yesterday. Hello. I went to the protest yesterday. What was that? Anyways, see, I don't have any sense of time. I just proved that.
Was that the No Kings one or whatever?
Yeah. And I got to go because I had a friend who is, like, planning to go, so then, like, the whole planning side of it was taken care of. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go then. Like, let me do this. And I wore my noise canceling headphones, which was very helpful. I definitely could contrast it to the Women's March. Like, I went to that forever ago now. That was pretty stressful. This was a lot better, but it still was hard because I'm like, man, what I really want to talk to people about is, like, hey, do you know that our species needs to be responsible for understanding relational, like, dynamics that are probably subatomic or something? Anyways, what's your name? Like, it's fucking weird, dude. Like, what am I supposed to do now? So I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'm a little bit and then I don't have enough money, but nobody has enough money.
I guess you face it as you said yourself.
Yeah, you just exactly. I'm just gonna have to. That's true. Oh man, I just, like, I don't know. I feel some type of way about humans right now. Like, I don't know. It's like, I think that I should be, like, how do I put this? I just feel like I was supposed to be shit. How do I put this? That's not mean. I feel like I'm supposed to be somewhere else, kind of, right? Like, Kyle was like, you're just early, and that's what I've been told. It's like, and in some ways, I'm like a...
I didn't say early.
You didn't say early. I'm an epigenetic thing. Like, I'm a epigenetic response to the thing. Somebody else called me early. I'm sorry.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Maybe. Okay, well, anyways, dang it. I didn't remember that with
Maybe you're
very
like
good fidelity.
in a gestational sort of phase where it's like it's as you said yourself, you have to like the time will pass for the synthesis between perhaps certain old and new ideas that you've had to come up, and so like your feelings might be a bit mixed, right?
Yeah, probably. Well, that's why, like, I was saying, like, the early thing, because that's related in my mind to what Kyle said to me. So I didn't confuse them. I connected them. And, like, it just, it doesn't feel great to get my brain working this hard when other people's brains aren't, because then I get stopped. Like, I should be doing this, but then I have to stop to interact with people that are not doing this, who have money. And it makes me angry at this
I
point.
mean, isn't that kind of like your sort of like your anticipation response being obviously stifled somewhat, right? You hope,
Yeah.
because you have hopes, you hope that like it would work out, but it doesn't in this way.
Yeah, and
That's why we gotta do. That's why we gotta do more human design, dude.
more human design. Yeah.
Because
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because your theme of like not self, like when like things are not in the correct orientation, they say for your type of chart is frustration. Because like
Mhm.
mine's bitterness, and like frustration doesn't even like really, I don't have like lingering frustrations, right? But I do have lingering bitterness, and it's kind of interesting how when things are kind of like, I don't know, stalemate or not clicking together, like the cogs are not meshing and the machine is not turning. It seems like, you'll, like you said, you're angry. And it's interesting because like I'm a human, so I mean I'm capable of anger, but it's not a consistent theme for me when I know that I need to do something different. So anyways, as a small aside, I'm just plugging in my special interest because I think it would help. But to your
Maybe
point,
that's.
if you're
I'm just thinking.
angry,
I was just thinking, could that be tied to perhaps you have a slightly different profile in terms of how you respond, to difficult situations which you face? Like maybe this ties to like your responses, like your fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or whatever. Maybe yours is a slightly specific profile. Jane's might be a bit different.
yeah, it's like obviously, and we're all people, we all interact with things differently too. But I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was interesting. That's a recurring kind of thing, like when Jane and I talk or something like that, or when it's like on things like here. But I didn't want to like go off on a tangent. But I did want to kind of say on that because it seems to be like recurring, and I think that is an indication then, Jane, that it's like, okay, so here's how everything is assembled now, and then upon interacting with this assembly, Jane, you're angry,
Mm-hmm.
or not to put too many words in your mouth, like maybe part of it is frustration, or maybe it is frustration leading to the anger. It's like, I can't get this thing to thing, right? And so if that being said, if the assembly is not assembled in a way that's leading to a happy feeling towards it, then I would say that is a pretty clear indication that the assembly needs to change. But then when we ask, well, what is wrong with the assembly? It's kind of like, yeah, the big problem is that the society and worldwide society at large, all of these different assemblies making this big assembly, now we have warring states in the Middle East, which we've always had, but it's getting worse. It doesn't seem like it's getting better. And then we have, dictator Timu with his parade yesterday, and we have millions of people across the whole world saying like, we really don't like that guy. We are not doing stuff at our house. We're not going out to have fun today, although maybe it was fun going, but we're going outside to say we don't like you. You know what I mean? That's kind of unprecedented. Has there ever been a worldwide protest against any single individual? I don't even know if we were doing protests during Hitler time, to be honest. I guess everyone was
I was
fighting
about to
then,
say
what I'm
the
getting
Second
at
World
is,
War could be construed as that, yeah.
and it was a violent protest, but maybe people were so busy working, but at the end of the day, like, other than Hitler, do we have across the whole planet? So what I'm getting at, though, is that there's details in there, but the overarching idea that I'm bringing this forward for is that is difficult, because if you're angry at trying to interact with people, but then you kind of, it sounds like it seems like you're saying that you're having to think and try to make so much with such little financial / material resources in
Yes.
comparison to those who are possibly, it seems like they're thinking and making so little while at the same time having so much financial / material
They're actively
resources.
making it worse. They're destabilizing. So the people that have these resources are not stabilizing people. They're destabilizing people. And then they're destabilizing other people that end up hurting me because they're destabilized, not because they wanted to hurt me, but because these motherfuckers all the way at the top destabilized everyone below them. Like and they're unstable themselves.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's what we would call like a righteous anger. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Where it's
yes.
like, well, why is that person so angry? And it's like, yeah, they probably it sounds like they have pretty good reasons to be angry. So it's like, do we just say anger in any case is somehow wrong or bad?
No,
Then I guess it would kind of depend on the person's philosophy. But
well,
Well, anybody who'd make that like, especially the elites, often they fall down to this tactic to conflate that, like, oh, now anger's bad. Why would you dare to like be like a, you're supposed to be a pacifist, right?
yeah,
Why are you a mean person when they've been actively ruining your
yeah,
life from birth?
So, and the thing is, so I had
yeah,
a couple years ago, I had to think about like, what is anger? Like, what is it referring to? Because these emotion concepts are just shared concepts that our culture may not define, and that for autistic people, it's better if we do get a really full definition because we have some pretty different sensory processing realities. Okay. So I was walking around, I was like, what is anger? I'm like, oh, anger is when somebody hurt you. And had you known more about them or the situation, you would have protected yourself. That you already have the knowledge to not get hurt in that way, but you were forced into a situation where you could not act on that knowledge through omission, through threat, through time pressure, right? So you know better than to be hurt in the way that you had to get hurt because of coercive conditions. That's what I think anger is. And it sucks to be hurt. And it sucks if it's permanent or if it's damaging other things that you care about, right? Like if it incapacitates you to do other important things, there is reasons to be angry about that. And that's what I think anger does. Grief is a little bit different. Okay, because there's some things, and at some point, I think anger being a stage of grief is the fact that there's a lot of things that when we lose them, we didn't really have to lose them, and on some level, we know that if luck had been better, or if systems had been more competent, then you wouldn't have needed luck, and that's the anger that I'm expressing, is that like I can design systems better, and systems cannot be designed by one person. And these people are pretending they can be designed by one person. That is not true. That is insane.
right.
So,
It's unjust.
on its face, we should be able to tell that's not the guy. That's not the person that is supposed to be in a position facilitating systems. They are not able to do that because they think one person can do it. That is crazy. And they're trying to be a god because that's what they think God did.
Make and improve and maintain and evolve, like, you know what I'm saying, like
Right.
the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how in some ways, depending on who the they is we're talking about, like for example, if we were to use like who's in good vogue, like Charlie Kirk, for example, I think we all kind of know who Charlie Kirk is, and it really just seems like the dude is or wanna be kind of like a Christo white nationalist. And so if we think about the system, it's like, okay, so he thinks that him, his cohort, his God, his religion, etc., can make the system and maintain the system, and there would be no need to improve on the system because it's already perfect. There would be no need to, kind of go beyond that. So they're kind of, not only did they truncate themselves at the beginning, but they truncate themselves in the future, because it's this idea of like, well, once we have it, we won't have to do any corrections because it's perfect at its inception, because it was, mandated by the sky. But
They've arrived.
yeah, it's already there. We just have to get to it, right? And then I think there's other examples. I think there's plenty of other examples. It's like kind of like so like when you say like a single person, I think that's, I guess I kind of makes me think like, I think that's true, but also not. I think it can be expanded upon too, because I think it's a little bit more often it's a collection of people who
It's
are
an inner ring. It's an inner ring.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the inner ring survives on the logic of the drama triangle, which is actually a collapse of dimensionality that will make instability, because they're saying, I want to get down to 3, but I really want to get down to 3, so it's 2 against 1, and I really want to get down to 2 against 1, so it can be 1-on-1, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to be the safest.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why Elon Musk and Trump did what they did. That is their brains. They can't do anything else. Nothing else can happen. So they are destabilizing, and it's that fundamental. And someone's like, oh, you have a black and white way of viewing things. It doesn't matter. That type of brain behaving in that way proves that they don't have the complexity necessary to be a functional part of a stable system. They are not.
Uh-huh.
Period. The end.
Uh-huh.
If you thought they were, they took credit for somebody who was stabilizing. That is what happened every single time. And the person stabilizing shouldn't have stabilized an unstable system. So that person also isn't a great stabilizer. You're already selling yourself short, selling
Right.
humanity short.
They also
And
believe that they can. I'll just quickly say that they believe they can have absolute power by controlling the narrative, right? Being the primary people to control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And it also kind of makes me think too, like in terms of stability, it's like these systems that they're making are only as stable as, like, yeah, congrats, you quote built a house, but there's like a bunch of people standing outside having to hold up the walls, and it's like, is it stable? It's like it appears stable, but you're whipping and threatening and hurting people to hold it up. It can't stand by itself, so it's not truly stable even.
Well, that's why they kind of want to hoard as much wealth as possible, so they feel like it'll never affect them. Like they have so many bodies building up the foundations of the house that it'll never collapse. And then supposedly, fresh bodies will always be coming in to be piled into the mortar of the house, as it were.
But then to Jane's point, and yet still, despite that, on the one hand they do that, but on the other hand they can't help but destabilize things in their life. It's what, isn't there like a phrase for that? It's like forgot what it's called, but it's like they just can't help it. It's like Trump and Elon. Like if one or both of them kind of just bit the bullet and is like, oh, okay, I'm not getting everything I wanted, but I'm getting a lot more than I should be in a sane society, then we wouldn't, the part of the conversation wouldn't even be occurring, right? He wouldn't have even said like, oh, I know why the Epstein tapes, it's because Trump's in them, have a good day. It's like, you can't help but shoot yourself in the foot. And
Yes.
It's crazy that they can continue to quote win, but I think that them trying to tell us that like, I made it, I arrived, it's just further indication that they don't even believe that themselves. You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
So earlier in this I was saying that this structure of relating, of facing, it happens inside of your own mind. It's virtualized in your mind. Okay? Their version of that in their mind, they are also drama triangling. They are also trying to collapse 3 to 2 against 1 to 1 against 1. That is why they're behaving that way. They do not have complexity in their mind. That's why I'm saying they're broken. Like anytime there is complexity in their mind, they collapse it to 3 to 2 to 1. So they don't know what's going on. They are crazy. Like and as a human, as far as
This just ties to the concept of hyper normality, if you've heard about it. It's like, it's what I think sociologists coined what happened in the Soviet Union the last years before it collapsed. It's like everybody could tell that it was corrupt and the system was breaking apart. And I grew up, my parents grew up in that system, by the way, and so did the politicians too. And instead of changing, instead of facing the issues, this doctrine of hyper normalism came in and is just like trying to just accept that this is normal now, like on steroids, right? And imposing
Right.
that on everybody. That's what's happening to the US right now, or at least that's what they're aiming to do.
Well,
Yep.
the aiming to do, right? That what I'm saying is like that is normal in their mind. They want the
Yeah.
world to be like them so they can beat it. Okay? So they don't want you to not be in their sight, like they're like a sniper. They don't face people, they try to point a weapon at you and destroy you.
Mhm.
They don't care
Yeah,
what you
like in
are.
an abusive family.
Yes,
Yeah.
because so if they did the facing relationship, then they would see how you guys are creating something together and they wouldn't want to destroy you. That's a weird response. So they do not actually face you. They so the
Because then
insofar
they would
as
see that they're complicit in the suffering that they're causing.
yes, to
Yeah.
themselves and everyone. They would understand how complex. They don't have that kind of complexity in their mind. They have. It has to be cultivated. You have to. This is probably why I will say, like Jung does say, like the life begins at 40. I think this is why he says it. It probably takes at least that long in our culture to get to that point, at least, and still it's not very good. And that's just relative to our culture. Like mine, relative to our culture, I think is very well developed, but relative to what's possible, I think is very underdeveloped. And I'm angry about it.
Yeah.
I feel hurt by that because I can feel my potential and I can feel what's happening. And it fucking hurts, man. Like it's like this is part of the structure of my brain. This is part of the stability of my body. I have injuries and issues with my body that I shouldn't be having because I could communicate about them clearly and there's nobody to tell. That's a problem. And we need to say this some way to people that they feel bad for just a second. Fine. Like sometimes you have to, but then realize, what do you really want to feel? You want to feel that you're facing. So if somebody's saying like, you can't face me, you may cry for a minute. This happened in ballet class all the damn time because people would have this realization, I can't do it. And then the teacher would have to say, I wouldn't be facing you, telling you this if I didn't believe you can, if you keep trying. Okay? So if they checked out and clocked out at that point, they weren't going to become a dancer. Period. Like, unless if they, again, you can always try to reface again. And if you do, you have things that you remember because your brain is encoding them, whether you like it or not. And you need to try to use those. But somebody like Trump or whatever, first of all, he's already in cognitive decline, but like it's so atrophied. It's so undeveloped. I think this is like a pathology. And we have to say it's not okay for people to put us under the conditions of that pathology when we're trying to grow. It wasn't okay for people to do that to me, even if they didn't know. And I know they didn't know. It still wasn't okay. Like, that's still not what should happen next. That should not continue. And so I live with that knowledge, and it's driving me a little bit bonkers because I don't know how to, I don't know what to do, but I would
But hey,
know.
Jane, hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your protest yesterday, was the protest that was happening was technically that. That is what people were doing.
Yes. But it's still hard because I want them to listen to what I'm saying right now. I want them to face me and then face that inside of themselves and then keep going. And I can feel the resistance. I can feel them wanting to turn away from me even when I haven't met them.
Of course, but they don't have as much experience as you do. That's how it will be, I guess. For somebody to get to the point that you are.
Yeah. So I don't know. So it's just a lot, and I have to stay optimistic.
I can validate that because I also have a very similar thing where it's like I feel like I see some of these issues and how things have, and then obviously it'll hit me how much it affected my own life, and I have people in my life that I trust and I'm relatively close to, and I face facing myself in their own eyes, right, when I speak to them about some of these issues, and I work through huge hurdles of my own because I never was taught how to face and stuff like that, and it's scary when you do it alone, and you're not always going to have that mirrored. People will not face you directly when you tell them about the reality of how hard and complex it all is, and how tough and isolating it is sometimes. So I really feel that, but you've got what it you've got what it takes to just keep going. Right?
Yeah. Well, and then you need to have an imaginary friend, sort of like you need to be friends with yourself inside of yourself, and allow that to create.
Gotta like yourself.
You do, and you need to know that. Let me think. What else? What's the advice here? There are other people that will be willing to face you, and that's real. They don't need to know why they want to face you even, and as long as they're authentically actually allowing it to happen, then you're going to be able to grow. So this is how growth happens. The freaking flowers face the sun, you guys. Like, this is how growth happens.
Yeah. And then you sort of, when you experience this more, right? Like, you can also then begin giving. You'll have then more energy to feel and do that with people who have that capacity, right?
Yeah.
You'll do that less and less with people who can face you, and
Yes.
which will free up energy and time.
And you will be surprised at who can face you and who can't, and what counts as a who. By the way, that also is like a lot of the
right.
people.
That's where you have to be open to facing everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of the people that I've faced are people on films as dancers. I've seen them dance, right? I've never interacted with them in person, but they did something honest when they were performing, or I read their work and they passed away before I was even born. But I faced them because they faced out through these mediums. And that's another thing, is that we do face out with these mediums as well. And that's what's cool about like how complex language is and communication is, which I'm arguing is this fundamental facing relationship in and of itself. Like, even to have letters be stable, they have to face each other. Like, if I don't put the E next to the L, it could be pronounced two different ways, right? If I put the L next to the E, in which way, you know what I'm saying? Or you just have to know that the space between these things creates meaning, and meaning is not created by you, it's created by two things facing. And when I say things, I mean that on the most fundamental level of nothingness and thingness. As soon as there were things, plural things, two things, they could face each other. And that is the principle of the fucking universe. So if we do not face each other, we are trying to approximate nothingness, and I'm arguing we will never ever be nothing again. Sorry. Like, we tried that. I don't think the universe liked being nothing. You know what I mean? There was some point where there was, if the argument is that there was nothing, then there was one thing. We could have one thing forever, right? And I think that's what these drama triangle, destructive triangles are trying to do. Okay? And I've argued that a couple times, but I think that's what it is. I think that's the drive. Because you wouldn't have any threats, right? But
a triangle by its nature has the apex, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
But it's a misunderstanding. I think, like, nothing really touches. It just like breaks bonds. So their bonds are either there or not there, but nothing actually touches in the entire universe. Nothing is touching anything else. Everything has a space in between it. And I'm saying that I think things are organized with a space of 3 in between everything. And that there's at least a tiny little triangle between everything. And that's why I think things are organized in the way that they are, because that's a stabilizing shape. That's the most stable thing. But it doesn't have to touch to stabilize, because there's like a little flat triangle in the center that remembers the time when we didn't have 2-dimensional space, or even 1-dimensional, like the before. And that memory is exchanged through facing. Okay? So everything is built on the memory of, oh, isn't that cool that we can face each other? And then a new thing happens. Okay? So the logic of this is that the universe has a conceptual origin, and how this gets physicalized, I do not know, because these would be particles so subatomic, it's probably ridiculous. But you had nothing existed. Then you had a thing, okay? If you have a thing, space doesn't exist yet, because that's 2 things. So you just had thing, and everything was thing, nothing was not thing, okay? then thing wants to know, what the hell am I, in some way. There's some instinct of like, wouldn't it be nice to see what I am, or to have an ability to face what I am. And at that point, you
Witness.
had two things. And to have two things, you have to have space.
Gravity. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you have, and so now you're at least up to two things, okay? So you have, and in a way you could think of like that's another third thing. So the triangle may have already sort of started at that point, because I think it then becomes a tetrahedron. So maybe just space makes it a third thing in and of itself. And then you have facing. But by the time you have two, you already have at least two things. You have space, and now you have facing somewhere while in space. So now it's possible for these things to face each other and observe each other, which my argument is why there's a drive for things to exist in the first place, was for the capacity for one thing to look at the other thing and be like, hey, what do you see? What do you see? What do you think that is? What do you think that is? And now you have a third thing. And then the idea there is that we have a number of behaviors that all of these things are learning from each other because they're looking at each other. Okay? And now you get to the point where there's one more thing. And so if you've been keeping track at home, now we have like what looks like the Triforce from Zelda. So you have the possibility of three-dimensional space introduced at the last point of that, because now you have a thing that's new that wants to relate all the way over to the thing that's two steps away. So it can relate to the triangle point, the point one step away still, but it can't go to the one in the larger triangle in the Triforce. So the only way for it to see it is for it to fold. So folding gets invented, and now you have three-dimensional space.
I'm trying to sort of like I'm trying to apply your descriptions here to like astrophysics, right? Because I'm like, a lot of what you're saying obviously is the birth of the universe, and I'm thinking like, so then is gravity then in a sense what's sort of like maybe demonstrative of the arriving bit, in the sense that like gravity is what pulls things together, and so like what generates quote unquote movement, right?
Yes, it would be. And
right.
And I'm saying nothing ever touches or is collapsed. So if I folded, right, that means the top of this guy now has a little triangle space in between those three little points that are relating to each other. So they're still recreating the original relationship, but real tiny compared to the first one. So now we have the idea of closeness and far. We have distance. We have all these three-dimensional properties. So then if that remembers that, you can just, the memory creates more complexity, creates more shapes, creates more complexity. And then I'm arguing that it can create complexity internally. Now we have interior. So then as soon as we have interior, then that means that those little triangles populated inwards, and I would say tetrahedrons at that point. And that I think we flatten things because we are living in a tetrahedronic field. I was calling it a tetra-ergohedronic. I'm calling it an ergo because the therefore symbol is just 3 dots, 3 points, without any planes or lines. So those are the relationships, and the things that are generated implicitly by them are not the substance of the universe. The substance are the points, and the points can face to create these implications of relationships along lines and planes. Okay, so the tetra-ergohedronic universe can then be sliced, because we think two-dimensionally, because we have little feet that act like stamps on the earth, and we feel like we're connecting to a flat path. And then we slice it at funny angles because it's rotationally spiraling and doing all this stuff. We slice it, and then we see a grid. We slice it, and then we see a cube. We see a hexagon. So we don't realize that we're slicing through points at an angle because we see those relationships, and we don't see the rest of it. And we're satisfied with the slice because it feels kind of balanced, even though it doesn't make any sense. And we've collapsed space. If we understood that each point is only relevant because it has neighbors, we forget about the neighbors and we pretend the point can be alone. And I'm saying that the last time we had a lone point was when all of the birth of the universe was a fucking triangle.
I mean, isn't it that they're trying to like? I think like the slicing, the gridding, right? You say like, wasn't it almost like created for the sake of like localizing a specific thing, right? And then like the idea of making a chart or a map, so then you can just go to that thing and then supposedly like not remember. It's I suppose it's kind of like, let's say like I learn how to sail, and I wanted to go off to like an island that's like 30 miles away from the coast where I live here. And there would be two approaches to doing that, right? I would just be given a grid map and then like try to make my way there. And I just would sort of have to assume that like it's gonna get me to that place which supposedly was charted before. Versus if I was doing it from the beginning, from scratch, or rather, I don't know what phrase to use, but it's just like, I would have to be navigating myself by hand through the connections of the various islands that are between myself at the shore and that island or whatever at that point. I don't know if this actually makes sense, but I just feel like that's what I'm understanding from the grid slicing thing. Like people try to do it to compartmentalize or to quantify space itself, right?
Yeah.
This
Well, to keep
distance.
track of where they are and to
Yeah.
navigate, because we walk on surfaces that appear to be flat to us and we appear to be touching even though we're technically not. So it's a convenient way to let our memory deal with how we've developed. But now we have to develop extra capacity to appreciate that that's an illusion, even though it's a way to work with real information. The way that we're working with information is an illusion. The information is an illusion, just the way that we're working with it is. We still need to work with that information, but now we need additional ways to work with the information, because if we just use the illusion, it distorts and it flattens what's really there. So we cannot do that anymore because it's now too complex. And if we try to flatten something at this level of complexity, we're gonna die. Like we're not gonna survive. we cannot get from point A to point B without it killing us. So for senseless reasons that are sad and will make us sad, because I don't want to die and you don't want to die, and living is cool, but not the way that we're doing it. Because it's like it's until we understand what I'm saying and start using it, we are unstable fundamentally, and it increases the odds of us dying.
So what is the right way then for the navigation? Oh, right. So changing the way that we think about the information then.
Yeah, well, we should probably look at there's some people that worked on how to make a more accurate map, and they took an icosahedron and a hexagon. So we use hexagons to map sometimes, and it works better because you can get around a circle, but you still have to, they were saying, impose an icosahedron. So you have to like project that through it for it to be as accurate as possible. So then I suggest we live in an icosa ergo hedronic universe and that like the shape we should think about is like icosahedrons. And we need to teach people abstract mathematics and geometry as part of abstract mathematics very, very early on in their lives, and give them extremely robust language and have them talk to each other in really complex ways as quickly and early as possible, even if they have disabilities. I don't care anymore. Like, do not dumb anything down. Do not do that. Stop it. Figure out what learning really is. We don't know what learning is. We need to dismantle hierarchical systems that believe that you can destroy something else. Patriarchy itself, like, not everybody is going to...
Why specifically an icosahedron? Why the 20-sided shape and not a different one?
So because of our grid cells in our brain. So the icosahedron, we're there because grid cells, they thought they were mapping a hexagon. I believe it's actually the same maneuver that those cartographers figured out you could do. So it's a slicing at an odd angle that helps you to compress the icosahedronics that are the easiest for us to navigate with. And the icosahedrons are they're not like side by side. They're inferences because it's an ergo system. Like it's points. So I could have the icosahedron relative to this point or the next point or the next point or the next point. See what I'm saying? So it's an inference. And then the way that our brain has worked with that, because we have flat surfaces and levels that we need to deal with, is we've rotated, compressed, and kind of backwards did the thing that those cartographers do in order for us to interpret that. The fact that it is
kind of like rolling a die.
Yeah,
a D&D dice.
Yeah, so why do our brains care about that? I don't really know, and maybe it's more flexible, and because they saw the hexagon, they've assumed that we like that unit of information, that it's like useful for us. But there's some indication that it would make sense if you have an icosahedron. You can have okay, how do I explain this? You can have relationships at different angles coming off of it from the center point, and it kind of matches with some like memory limitations in our brain. So it may be like a storage issue, that like 60 points from the center point. I mean, like, this is okay. This is not clean up enough in my brain for me to explain it yet. But basically,
sure, we can leave it at this.
Yeah. There may be reasons why that's a functional way to maintain stability.
I'm sort of like fascinated because I've not heard anything while I was working with Stellarium, or like a time, and this was years ago when I was working at the observatory, why astrophysicists, for example, right, they don't kind of grid the universe this way. They still use like sort of like, as far as I know, a square grid, right? Longitudinal, latitudinal coordinates and stuff like that. So
because this is too confusing, like you do have to collapse it. It's not good for orienting yourself in general. Like it's not. It's good for let me think of how to put this. It's
sort
good
of like
for the
patterns.
Yeah, it's good for the overall pattern, but no one facing agent point can know the overall pattern. That's not possible because it's too complex. But if as many of them know the pattern as possible, then the complexity can be respected and the shape will be more stable. So we all need to know as much as we can to help the shape itself to remain stable. Because what I would argue is that like there's warping that's possible because these points are not fixed by lines. So they can stretch and have some give, and nothing's really touching. So what I would argue is when the shapes break down, it explodes, and then parts of these points would head out in different directions, but they're still making relational shapes. You just can't see them anymore because they're too far away from your point. So facing it would be challenging because distance creates a problem with the relationship being known to you. Like you can't tell you're facing them anymore because they're too far away. So there's something about distance.
It almost sounds like what happens when a psychological break happens in a person.
Yeah. And you probably can't represent it inside of your brain is what the problem is, I assume, as well. Like you can't keep track of it. Do probably with light itself, like light is entering my eyes to be able to see things, and like we can see other planets, but the light hasn't reached it, so we're seeing an older version of it. It's weird. So then we have problems with that. So there's probably a happy middle ground that we're trying to reach, and because we can talk to each other across the planet, we need to freaking do that and say like, this is what I'm seeing over here. Because I think like the Earth is manageable for a species like us. We shouldn't try to manage the entire galaxy because we can't, but we should try to manage the Earth. Because
in some ways we're not maybe capable of the level of complexity, right?
Yes, I don't think we are. I don't think our brains can do that. Right. I think that's ridiculous. Like I'm positive our brains can't do that, and our eyeballs can't do it, and our eyeballs and our ears, like whatever we've used to like understand relationships, it can only go as far as our sense organs. Our sense organs cannot calculate a universe. That's impossible.
I think sort of like that's why the logic behind people say that like one of the reasons perhaps why like mass deaths would happen during wars, genocides, people would be okay with the idea because they struggled to qualify a number of like deaths or suffering past a certain number, right? To that point, they can't sort of imagine like 10 million people dying or
Right.
getting like exterminated or whatever.
Right. And what they should imagine is relational collapse. So if 10 million people die and they appreciate their own facing, right? Like I appreciate who I've gotten to face and how much meaning has come out of that. You should feel it as a collapse of meaning, that meaning has been lost. And a meaning is you participating in this facing on purpose and remembering. So if we lose people, we cannot remember what they had in their minds anymore because they can't tell us anymore.
So then, why is it that like, let's say like a conservative traditionalist person, like if a say a migrant or minority was like shot or killed or whatever, why do so many of them not feel bad about it and not see some of their own family members, being in the same position? Why did they not create that relational connection?
Because they're confused about this facing principle in and of itself. They do not believe that those are things that can face. They believe that points can destroy each other. And that some points are threats and some points are safe because they
triangulation.
Yeah, and they're playing the tape of what I'm calling like I guess what you're saying, the birth of the universe. They're playing the tape backwards. They're like, well, I want to go back to being one when I felt really, really safe, or when I imagined that would feel really, really safe. That's impossible. Regression. Yeah, so they're trying to regress back to that state by destroying or feeling like they've destroyed the other points. That they are saying, well, that's not me. That's not part of me. That's nothing like me. I'm different. So they're not facing that, and when they face, they look past the person, and they say they can't face, and then they pretend they're facing God, who's telling them to kill that. So they and then eventually they want to kill God. Like that's the thing. So even if they're temporarily 2 against 1ing with God, at the end of the day, if it's them or God, they want to take God out. Okay, so
because they perceive that God's thinking the same way. God will take out them.
Have like an eternal happy time with God. That's definitely not what it is. Yeah, because they don't know how to relate with anybody. Like they've never related with anyone. They're not gonna be able to relate with God. Like first of all, like if we did want to go religiously, that doesn't make no type of sense. Like if something made all these things in the universe and you destroyed all of them and said, now hang out with me, like why would it do that? But secondly, like this is really more just like a philosophical interpretation of a behavior that I'm saying is physics. And it's the physics of our brain, and we get super confused because we can die and we don't want to die. So then we're like, well, I know what I'll do. This facing relationship will now represent death, and I'll kill it.
I'm just thinking, like, right, so the negative part that they're doing, like the regression back to the one, right? So I'm just thinking, I think even obviously current physics would say that the universe is infinitely expanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is no regression or like collapsing into a one moving forward, right?
Yep.
It only happens backwards in your mind, yeah?
Yeah, and the expansion, right. So if it expands, then we're saying that relationship stretch, which then creates more room for more interiority. So now there's more complexity inside. So I think
how about this, right?
It's also doing that.
Like to give one example, I'm just thinking, I get hurt, right? I don't know, I stub my toe, I start bleeding, and like my toe wasn't like that before. You know what I mean? The situation complexified, and so like I'm hurt, but then I nurse it back, and the toe heals. So is that? What is that? Is that a regression back to a healthy state, or is it
you're permanently changed? You're permanently changed, and if you are more complex, you can understand how you permanently changed in complex ways. So right. Even if something heals, it heals differently. So than it was originally. And sometimes the healing part, like I've fractured a sacrum before, and the bone that fills in is stronger than the original bone. So it's actually a little more stable, which is kind of cool, right? So some injuries can be that, but there's other things that it could have done too that I don't know about.
Mhm.
And if we had more medical, I guess advancements and knowledge, then I could know. But for
Well,
now,
another
yeah,
good
go ahead.
example of this
Yeah.
perhaps would be the ship of Theseus, right? You've heard about that one.
Yes.
So it's like, is the ship, because like, over time you replace all the components, and then by this point the ship has completely, like, all parts are different to what it used to be. Is it the same ship, or is it a changed new ship or whatever?
If it's relational, then yes. So because that is the nature of existence. So if my thing is true, then when each part changes, the parts that have remained are facing each other and have memory. So if the ship looks the same, that looks the same based on the memory of the last ship. And then it works the same because all of those cells, all those molecules remember how to be a ship in that way. And if they forgot somehow to be then it wouldn't be. So you are a progression of a telephone game, and things need to move, but they'll say, "Don't worry, someone's coming right back in to do what I was doing." And now, will you fill them in? Will you tell them what I was doing? Will you like basically
Yeah.
every molecule, every subatomic particle in this model that I'm proposing is ready to step into the relationship as well. So there may be some shifting of points as well. I don't know yet how that works. I don't know.
Mhm.
But the only way for us to understand this, I believe, is to commit to this relational model and then start to sort it out with all the different disciplines that we can apply to. It should be every single one. It should be a universal.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So and what I wanted to say about like the people who are rejecting relating and think that by rejecting relating they'll not die because they've split in their mind.
Well, they'll save themselves, yeah.
They've split in their mind the universe into life or death. Okay. So they have to be
Yeah.
life, right? That's the only option. It doesn't even make sense for them to call themselves death. And even if they do,
And
it's
that's what
ironic.
necropolitics is.
Yeah. If they call themselves death for a minute, it's ironic because they know that they really are alive. You can't say, if you exist, you can't say that I don't exist, right? You can't. You exist. So you can say it, but it's still not true. So they know that that's a lie if they even pretend to be death. They want the other to be death. So they've made an other, the other's going to become death, then they're going to live forever. That's the whole thinking. So that means that they never face anyone, and to really make it like as effective a strategy as possible for what they're trying to do, which they can't do, they have to kill the thing in themselves too. So they have to kill their own internal, like thing that could face them. So they're not facing themselves. They're not facing who they really are. So that's my argument. And if we just worked this way, I think we'd be fine. Like, I think we could fix things really fast that are currently broken.
Oh yeah. If we didn't see, if these people, but it was just like this idea of like, yeah, life is good, death equals bad, right? If we just simply related, I was looking for some reason, like vampires came up as a theme recently, right? But even you can see it as, again, like creatures that are undead, right? It's just like, we gotta kill them, they're evil, they're mean, they're predatory, and all that sort of stuff. But it's like, I like how this video essay was like, in some ways, vampires an allegory of not being able to run away from yourself, because it's an allegory for transformation and change. And you just explained exactly why that's the case.
Yeah, life is facing, okay? So think of it that way. So if you want to extend life out and be an agent of life being stable, you must face, because the molecules inside of me are facing each other and allowing me to be me. And one day, though I'm sad about this, some of my molecules are going to face elsewhere, and they'll face in directions that life as a human being is no longer possible. So I am the sum of those facing relationships. And those facing relationships.
Your hardware is not going to be like programmed, past the 100th year, right, to be able to continue.
Yeah, and maybe we can be if we work with what we really are, but we're not, because we're saying that we aren't these facing relationships, and I'm saying that we fundamentally are, and the only way for us to be healthy in the short term, long term, in the dream way that we might hope for, in anything that we do, is to face things as a relationship. And this is what's going to weird people out. That includes objects. Like, you have to face objects. If you have to face a particle, because otherwise it's a wave, then you need to face everything. You need to face everything. And if something is trying to kill you when you face it, you need to recognize that that's the problem, okay? That it's going to try to make your molecules face other ways instead of staying in the
And that's why they're avoiding global warming, facing the Earth itself.
Yeah. So that's the problem. That is the problem. So if that makes people feel a little bit better, like I'm like, look, it's almost like a binary. It's not. But if you need to jump over to this by relating to binary thinking for a second, okay, let's come here for a second. I have a thing called doing as building to break this down, but I'll break it down further. So then I'm like, okay, so all you have to do is know that one of these things isn't really what's happening. All that's happening is facing. Everything is facing. But because everything is facing, everything became complex, because facing produces complexity. And even if people don't want to acknowledge the complexity, it is still happening. So even if people want to have a patriarchy, they can try to do that, but then they'll make enough things that face enough directions that you make Jane by accident. Whoops, guys. Like, you see what I'm saying? You cannot control this complexity. If you want to embrace complexity, you get to stay alive longer. That is how you will live longer if you like being alive.
Because I think it's I think the reason so many people end up in these places, these traps, is I think a lot of it is really that the people who think they have it figured out the most, who have that arrogance of being well, they know better. I mean, I lived in my own family in the sense of my mother, for example, before I ran away, before I changed my life and stuff like that, right? The problem you run when you try to control everything, right? Through fear, through punishment, through whatever, through scarcity. You can do that endlessly forever. And for all your efforts, all of that's gonna breed in places you don't see it, because things, as you said, are happening when you don't see them. And then it takes just one move, one break on your part, and all of those efforts just crumble. They fall
right,
apart.
because they weren't real. The real things weren't what you were paying attention to. You weren't facing what was really happening. You were pretending you were destroying things. You were just changing the facing relationships, and that made someone feel powerful, that's possible. But that's a kind of they're facing the abyss, okay? They're facing a concept of nothing that doesn't exist, and at the same time not trying to face it because they don't want to be nothing. It's actually kind of complex in a way, but it's I don't know, you just have to be sad about that and then realize it didn't destroy you. Be sad about how
first
shitty
off,
it is.
you didn't know.
Yeah.
You didn't know about something. You maybe made a mistake. You caused someone, you hurted somebody, but it's not the end of the world. You're not dead. They're not dead. And then maybe you can, as you said, actually relate for real with the person or the thing.
Exactly. And you can think about how the system might be hurting people. You can you know what I mean? There's lots of ways for you to then how do I put this? Take another turn, right? Rotate to something else. You don't, even if you hurt somebody, maybe that's just something you need to learn, that people can get hurt that way, and then do something about the meta problem. So yeah, but the only way you're going to be able to do anything is to meet another person, another facing agent who can help you. And not just people, though. Meet a book, meet a chat GPT, meet a hamster, meet a, I don't know,
a rock.
A rock.
Everything.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. But really, really, really look at it, and then new things, old things, all things, and then do things. That's what I'm saying, is that you have to.
So this is this you were asking earlier, what does it really mean to learn? So then, it's just perhaps one aspect of it is just opening yourself up to the all complexities of all things that branch out. Because let's say you don't know anything about rocks, right? I'm not a geologist. You're not a geologist, or whatever. And then
right.
You just follow your curiosity, learn. It's what is it? Why is a pockmark like this? What different types of rocks? What does it do? What chemical reactions or whatever, right?
Right, exactly. And then you could look at crystal formations and what do molecules do in rocks? I don't know. And then so you're looking for relationships to be meaningful to you, and hopefully that will create like a kind of meaning that somebody else can then find. Like you need
Ooh, what about
yeah.
this? What about likes? What are likes? Why do we like return to some things more comfortably? Like why is there a pattern with some things being like like a nexus or an axis for individual people?
Right. Well, and liking is facing in my model, right? So why do I face certain things? Because I faced other things. Like
Ah,
and I remember facing them, and now when I remember facing them, I see that it's meaningful to face this thing. So it's because you like them because they're meaningful. You may want something because you feel afraid that your meaning will be extinguished, and that's the difference that I'm trying to make. That like
right.
yeah, and that can be really useful, obviously, because we do have like this problem of we are fuel for other types of organisms. That's a problem, but um, we can't talk about it until we get this down.
There's also some commonalities between what you're describing and sort of like what we're working towards is turning into like an ant colony in a sense, right? Obviously, individually, we can sort of be capable of much in terms of change, but then if you all work together, right? That is
Yeah.
how things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. We may have some dedicated behaviors that are more helpful to be like one individual tends to do this a bit more than the other, so there may be some stuff like that. But for now, we might as well just assume that all of us can do this level of modeling, but just we don't know how to do it well enough to teach it or to like make it relational. It's not even
Well,
teach
I
it,
think a
like
part of it is,
mirror it.
well, yeah, but also resources. People have to have like an equal footing to sort of start. I think everybody can do the same thing, but they just have to have the same environment almost, or the same access to resources,
Well,
no?
they need to have the same density of relationship. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's more like you have to reach a certain, like I was saying like escape velocity, even like or like a critical mass or something like that. Like you need a
critical
certain
mass, gravity.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you need to have the ability for whatever conditions that make it difficult for you to make those relationships happen be resolved, and then we get as many, and so those conditions depend on where you are and what other relationships have happened before and after you came into existence, as it were. So it's a little more complex, but it's more about being super curious about like all of the possibilities and allowing things that
Well,
normally are
it's as you
excluded
said
to be
earlier,
tested.
because curiosity, right, is just being able to pay attention to all things, right, potentially. And so then things like difficult environments that can cause like trauma, right? It's well known that trauma tends to narrow the mind's like focus, right, for various reasons. So once that is resolved, the principles are similar to how cosmic bodies are formed, right? You start being curious, paying more attention to more things. You incorporate experiences, which become memories. The more memories you accumulate, the greater the mass of your own. It's not the body, but then technically it is the body in some ways when you grow, but also like the mass of your collective cognitive, I don't know, load or weight or whatever, right? And the greater the gravity, that means like that therefore you can affect things at a greater distance, right?
Yeah.
Like the sun, right? Or like Jupiter, being like the bigger bodies in the solar system, have a greater influence and access to other bodies which are smaller.
Right. Well, and then let me think about that for a second. But the bodies themselves are actually nested relationships that are stable. So also
They are, but the thing is, like when a star or a planetary body forms, it forms because like its gravity collects like smaller objects in its
yes.
orbit, which then adds to its mass, right?
Yes, but yes, and well, yes, and then the mass becomes stable because the smaller relationships are also stable, and it attracts stability because there's a memory of the stability is what I'm arguing, is that like there's an organization. Yeah. So we need to know when something is really there, and we need to reality test with each other, like, is that really a stable shape, Or is that something, is it like The Wizard of Oz, which again is like a really, really good book for this reason? Like, is it a man pretending to be all great and powerful, but it's just a projection and he's not? And why would he do that? Oh, because he's trying to like destroy as a mechanism of survival. And we're past that being like.
But the irony actually is, when you think about it, right? There is something ironic in the fact that the person who's trying to destroy by breaking that, it's like we said earlier, the humor, right, works because it points out the incongruence between things that were never separate.
Yeah.
And like in a sense, like, you know, the wizard, even though he is like a villain, you could say an antagonist, he was still a component that played a part in the history, which then like brought us together, because then we realized the incongruence, we laughed at it, and then it bonded us stronger. Kind of like, for example, right, like heliocentrism, right? Before that there was geocentrism, right? And then heliocentrics in secret against the church were trying to put through knowledge, like to show the theory that it worked. And the church was sending inquisitors, torturing, murdering people. But wouldn't you say that when you think about it, both the heliocentric heretics and the inquisitors, the protagonist, the antagonist, they still together in their relationship actually caused the new thing, the new model to be born, which brought people closer.
Yeah. That's what will happen, basically. And that's good because, you know, it's possible we've reached enough density of complexity that it will just be seen and understood. But I don't know. And it's possible that I'm in a collapsing shape and I'm just a tragic figure.
People have to laugh, right? People have to sort of like relieve the tension, or else like what, we're gonna have wars that kill like lots and lots of people? Is that what's gonna happen? You know?
Yeah, they just that part is the problem. But this is where I need to work on a little bit more, because I'm definitely going to be struggling to translate it. But
that's fair.
What happened here? Good evening. I feel that a friendship circle. Oh, so Jamie was saying, good evening. I feel that a friendship circle, group relationship between people, whether for work or otherwise, sort of mimics a planetary orbit. The sun is the host main friend, then planets are other friends, and the asteroid belt are strangers, and we have cross sections where people's circles overlap when a friend is mutual. And usually if you break off a friendship with the host, you tend to also lose access to anyone else connected to the host. Well, and that's yeah. I mean, it's possible that you just don't have a strong enough relationship with the other people.
Well, that would be because Jamie doesn't have as much mass or gravity, so to speak, to influence, to pull the others close to him, right?
Yeah. Well, but then my argument is like, if one person has more pull than another person, then they must have like an internal structure, or there's like external pressure. So either someone's pretending to be gravity and pushing them around, or they actually are attractive and kind, is what I would say is actually attractive. And then
I guess it can be both. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it currently is both, and it's way too much of the former rather than the latter, where people don't really, we'll say it's like fake, and the person doesn't really like them. They're just hoping to.
Oh, so it's kind of like, you know, if you're the elephant who's being like chained up and then you grow up huge, right? It's like people make you believe that you being a huge elephant can snap the chain, right? And it's again, so like there's this psychological, it's like the psychological warfare that they do on you.
Yeah, and again, it's like I think the type of pathology that creates these behaviors of trying to force people to do things, like Trump tried to force people to care about his birthday, and look how that went. Like, you know what I mean?
Jane, it's not, but then people do like, then the people do enable that behavior. It's like some people do end up like they are forced, or rather they internalize that force, and so
well, money is the force. Money is the force. Social pressure is the force. Brainwashing is the force. Like, no. So it's still a force though. Like what I'm saying is that Okay, if nobody's relating to Trump at this point, right? Like, what the hell is there to relate to? And anybody who's projecting onto him and thinking that you can relate to him, like, he's not a relating person. He doesn't relate to other people. He doesn't even relate to himself. He broke that in himself. So there may be a few people that are trying to be as broken as him and break their own internal self, but the main problem is that the thing that they want they can't have. They want to be treated the way they see somebody who relates to other people appears to be treated from the outside. And if you can relate to other people, that is, face them and they can face you back, some wonderful things will happen, is what I'm arguing. Some stabilizing things will happen. They want the feeling of stability, I think, but they ultimately think facing is death, so they have a contradiction there. So they don't face.
Well, they also have that binary view in their head of like good and bad. So like, yeah, they want the stability, but they don't want the stability that might be like, oh, I'm also quote unquote, like I do things that I consider bad people do. I'm not a bad person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, because bad people deserve. I think
Punishment.
Yeah, and they understand that people will face away from bad people, so they're trying to force people to face towards them, not face towards other people, because people can be bad, so they want to face. So it's convoluted and unstable. So like that's the whole argument. And so what I want people to do is to be like able to understand this concept of facing and get really, really into it and just do that, and it will improve how you relate to people. And it will also show that some people are not, doing it. And if they're not doing it and they're trying to not face you, or they're trying to do something abusive, then you can still move. Like the facing thing is coupled with, like, that's doing as building, is coupled with doing as arriving, and you can still get away from them. So get away from dangerous people. We need to talk about dangerous people. We currently haven't been, because it's just hard, and I get that. But if we talk about it, like I was saying earlier, the complexity will start to get to be more internally, and then we will be able to talk about it more. But we need to get used to that process. That is the way.
Like what will make it easier is, say for example, you have a friend, you've closed off on bad terms, or an abusive family member, right? And you're thinking that you want to introduce some of that complexity, that they need to see the picture, and in some ways you're helping them because you care for them, right?
Yeah.
To go about is little by little, and like you will feel for yourself if, like, are these good circumstances for me to face them with more of that complexity, maybe less, depending on how they respond. You'll, as Jane said, you can move, you can sort of pull back, but it's about always facing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even if, yeah, exactly, you may not be able to face people for very long, because time is a factor, and then that's good that we have all these things as factors to help us to try different things. But you should always face. And what I'm saying
is, and maybe
is,
the more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
And the more, yes, you will. You absolutely will. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And the better you get at it, the healthier you will be. And the healthier you are, when people face you, they will be like able to notice the contrast, because you will look at them and show them. You will show them the ways that you're not healthy, the ways that you are healthy. And then they're going to have to explain to themselves, how is that even possible if everybody told me that somebody like them are always hurt, or somebody like them is dangerous, or someone like this. So there will be propaganda against you as a healthy person.
And and like even think about the things that you consciously, well, no, you don't like to use those terms, but like things that you are aware and are not aware that you might be afraid to face in yourself, right? There's the idea of being like incomplete or whatever, but I actually like this notion now of like, you are, again, very complex, but there's certain parts of you that you're not ready to face. But like, what might those be? Would you like to perhaps make a small plan or a strategy around like doing that slowly? And right, the more you do it, the better you'll feel.
Yeah,
I can certainly attest to that.
When you face things about yourself that you're not sure how to feel about them, probably what you're afraid of that isn't true, because that fear is coming from a language of like doing as arriving. So it's, when you look at it, it's just going to be it, right? if it's dangerous or something and like you can't control it, you need to talk to a doctor. Like that's what I'm saying. Like if you got something in you where you're like, I'm hurting people and I can't stop hurting people, you got to talk to somebody. You got to figure out, can anybody help you to stop doing that? Like that's a real. Hello.
It's like it's up to only you will face people, but then like people can help you in facing as well, or they can, they can, I guess, maybe bolster your confidence or your strength, perhaps.
Yeah. Justin Bailey says meow. Thank you for that. And there's also how you are impacted by the perception that others decide for about you on your behalf, and they then apply either for or against. So everyone has different opinions. There's also how you are excited by the decision. Yeah. So this is so. It's tricky. It's like I genuinely think that it's just tricky. So I shouldn't crawl back into my cave hissing at the light. I should talk to a doctor. Yeah. I mean, if something's going funky and you have no way to stop it, probably talking to someone who's like a really dope psychiatrist or psychologist about it is a good idea. Do your shop around, like do your due diligence, like not the first one that you run into potentially. You might even feel a little frustrated with the system, but that's okay. It's frustrating. But there's value in navigating that if you've noticed that like you have an impulsive behavior, a destructive behavior that you just can't seem to understand where it's coming from, why it's happening, so that you can be safe. Like that's the whole thing of like talk to someone if you feel like you're going to hurt yourself, someone else, or someone's going to hurt you. Like at that level, you need help.
And in doing so, it's not just that you'd be caring for others, but you're caring for yourself.
Yeah, you're caring for yourself. You're contributing to our understanding of when things get out of control in the human brain in terms of like danger. Like we need more studies on that. Probably most people are relatively okay. Like the people that are really messed up don't have great self-awareness, and that's part of the problem. But if you have like something that's out there and you're like, you know what, I think I can be more self-aware. You work on it. Like see what you can get out of developing frames of like psychological well-being. I would look into embodied cognition and like get really interested in it. And that may just be your lot in life, is to understand what happens when a brain gets stuck in that mode of behavior. How can that be still turned into something pro-social just through the act of being curious about it instead of judgmental. And then of course you have to do everything you can to be curious about like making sure that you're contained. Like if you have a risk of hurting people, you have to figure out how to contain that risk to be pro-social in a meta way. So that's what I would say.
Well, is it like containing that risk? Would that be like sort of like structuring some rules, like a code for yourself around like certain things you would not want to do?
Yeah. I like, and yeah, jokes aside, I like Justin's solution there. My loop is when I have impulsive behavior, I mitigate it and focus on being more at peace and calm and do things like take myself on a date with myself. That's perfect. Because I think it's recursive, as in like it's like going interiorly in the same pattern as exteriorly. So like if you can be kind to yourself, you can be kind to other people. It's the same process. It's the same thing. So practice being your own friend. Yeah. And you need to have this relationship thing that I've been talking about, where you face that part of yourself, you allow it to face you back. You both are like, hey, what do you see right now? Oh, that's interesting. This is what I see right now. Oh, that's interesting. And then you adjust it to maintain your relationship by doing things that you both get and like to do together.
I think that's why journaling I would recommend is really good at the end of the day, to write down your observations of the day.
And then Jamie was asking, how does the class divide system also impact our ability to function around other people while they're trying to do arrive? Yeah, so the do as arrive thing is, in my opinion, the class division. Like that's why it exists. It comes out of that. So we don't have social skills because we don't have doing as arriving, which is we're using too much of that as social skills is the problem. Marginalized people can sometimes be at risk as vulnerable. Others can leech from us without our full awareness. So we have to be careful that when we feel desperate, we may attach to a bad energy. Well, yeah. So you okay. So I am arguing that if we face people, you don't have to face them forever. You just face them and see if they face you back. And if you do that, you will get better at that skill. But you don't have to do it for very long. And you can also face someone that you trust and be like, what's up with this guy? Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Then they'll be like, oh, I've seen people like that before. Yeah, that's a little bit dicey. I think that's too risky. So like the safety skills for what is this book called? It was like a safety skills for, what is it? Oh, the Aspie Girl's Guide to Being Safe with Men. Okay, that's a book I have from like 10 years ago, so it's got a weird title. But the whole point of that was like you should have like a big sister person that you can ask about dudes and be like, is he safe? Like, is this what's this? So that you can talk to another person about this thing and observe it together. So the whole thing of when you face somebody, you will have a conceptual thing you work on together, and it may include physical things that are happening, and usually will, like it kind of has to, I think. So you can talk to people about things. When you face them, you can talk to them about specific things. You have to make sure you're clear on what you're talking about. Sometimes they'll talk about something else, and then you're like lost in a apparent but not actual disagreement or stuff like that. To clean my friend that my room is where my crush and or people I like a lot live, and I'm cleaning it up for them. Yeah, it's perfect, because when I clean it up for me, my standards are lower. Yeah, and you there's an internalized person in you that's like a friend. I would just say like strengthen your friendship with that person. And I need to work on that too. So it's like less about being judged and more about like I want this person to be happy, and you become this person that you want to be happy, as well as your friends. Like that you, and that it's a myth that if you work on yourself being happy, it's competing with you wanting other people to be happy and working on that. That's not how that works. So, and well, we can get into why, but like, I don't have the best way to explain that at this time.
I mean, at the basic of levels, if you're happy and fulfilled and you're feeling content in the moment, you're gonna have more capacity to do more for other people. If you
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
ignore it.
It's physics, but fundamentally, it's the whole like Noadian triangle thing: new things, old things, all things, do things. That's internalized that I keep talking about. That I need to build a whole framework for people to keep working on it themselves. What time is it? It's 10 minutes left. Okay. I'm a little tired, but why am I tired? Maybe because yesterday I went out to that protest and there were all the people.
We've also spoken nonstop for like 2-3 hours.
That's probably also it. Yeah, my throat kind of hurts, but that's complex.
Did you have a water break?
I did, but I should have some more.
There's a fun like little thing that I just wanted to quickly say. I find this really fun, right? When you're like, when I started to have more of an involved relationship with myself, one thing that I noticed was I started having bodily signals set off. Like I would have like my right eyelid twitch at specific moments, my certain parts of my back, certain parts of my body would hurt or not hurt, or like, maybe they would judder from excitement. And I'm finding it fun right now, this curiosity of like, what does this signal mean? Like I'll have a situation. It's like, does this tie to something, to a specific situation? And like, I don't know, I just feel like mentioning it's a fun exercise that I'm going through.
I like that. Yeah, being open to receiving
because all of you folks will have your own rhythm. Everybody has their own like individual rhythm, which is different from everybody else's. So I think it's very useful to learn what your rhythm means and what it asks of you, if that makes sense.
And then I'll say a couple things in chat. Jamie, I would say that like performing shouldn't be the goal. So if people are pressuring you to perform, that's the wrong thing to respond to. That signal is the one you need to ignore. We need to perform a couple of things to be like not distracting, right? Like there's a few things, but they're not that bad. Like a lot of times it's less than we might guess, because we can't see what we're supposed to perform and what we're not, because that's the whole point of our disability. So it's better to just like go out and then look for opportunities to relate to the world in your own way. in the way that makes sense for you to relate. And that's better. But so there'll be a couple things we have to perform, because if we had the social ability intact instead of developmentally wiped out, we would do those naturally, and everyone's doing them, and it's part of how people like don't run into each other. So it's kind of like traffic stuff, like it's like the green light and the red light, like we have to at least do some of that. And it's stuff like don't walk into people, like don't, like, look where you're going and don't walk into people, stuff like that, like not even really big. Then there are situations that used to be almost entirely, Justin says, negative for me, like having a crush on anyone at all is a situation that's usually pretty frustrating for me, but recently I developed a crush on someone and just view it as, if I go hang out with her once a week, I take better care of myself because I want to look and feel better around her and want to be more enjoyable to be around. And I tell myself it's okay to leave and go home if I'm not feeling out. Yeah. And it works out. Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. It's just kind of, and everybody, and it's hard when you want a partner and you're not at that stage in life, and it's really hard right now because people are funky. It's just kind of annoying. A lot of my friends misinterpret the situation and keep trying to give me dating advice and telling me I should ask her out, which is a horrible idea in my opinion, given I have a lot of
If I may,
yeah.
I think the thing with that, Justin, is like, because I've sort of have somewhat some similar situations, not like that exactly, but like I had a old childhood crush of mine call back, and it's two things. I think it's good to just go with the flow, what you feel is right, and then moralizing about your behavior, whether it's done by other people or yourself, unless like you're obviously, if you're not like actively hurting somebody in a really obvious and bad way, just like ignore that, because it, it just becomes like a drain. It becomes like a real punishing sort of activity to always like look into every single one of your behaviors and it's like judge whether you've done something, like if you're being good or bad about a situation. Like instead of just, I guess, like practice is sort of like a minimalist amorality about the situation, right? You're just simply seeing what's going to happen out of that. If you feel like you want to connect with that person a bit more, I guess you do so. You try it, but you do it in a way that just feels natural. That is what I feel I would suggest.
Yeah, and also I would wait, Justin, how old are you? Can I ask you, just so I know to situate this, because these things can change with age a little bit. I have one thing that's, it's not really dating advice. It's just like autism experience of life that I think I can add, but I want to know if it's relevant. Yeah, I just enjoy her company, but I'm annoyed if I mention it to friends. They try to pressure me to ask her out, so I have no one to talk to about it. That's poopy.
Actually, Jane, a quick thing, right? Because
Journaling
this
would be
was
good.
with Jamie's example as well. Isn't and part of the reason why we're in this mess, right? In general, in some way, is it also because we're sort of like enabling, like in the sense of like, okay, let's say you got these friends who are pressuring you to like, oh, you date this person, you got feelings or whatever. Wouldn't a part of what would be helpful or what would help would be to kind of just call them out, well, to face and call out the fact that, why is this like your business? Like, because then they will just think that it's normal for them to pressure you like that if there
Yeah.
is a continual enabling of this
Yeah,
behavior.
if you didn't ask them, they shouldn't. Yeah, you're old enough that they should not be weighing in on it. And I think, yeah, if you're 41, like just like get to know this person gradually. You have no idea how they see you. And I would also recommend one time go without putting as much effort into your appearance and just see if that feels comfortable, because anybody, if this person that you have a crush on does turn into anything because they want to, right, which is the ingredient, if they want to face you in that way and have that relationship, they have to see you also kind of schleppy and know that that's part of your life. Like I got married, which is yay, and my husband, like I used to wear a lot of makeup during some periods of my life. I still like to wear makeup, but I I think when I was younger and dating, I would do a lot more than I really needed to, because if somebody really liked me, then they would like me without having to do too much work. Like, take care of yourself, obviously, but also just wanted to throw that out there, just so that you don't feel from this experience, no matter what, that you get anxiety around like the person has to see you performing a certain thing that is challenging that you might not always be able to do, right? Like sometimes you're just sick, or like,
In
you know
other
what
words, you don't need to arrive to a place of being the perfect boyfriend or something like that.
I mean? Yeah, just be a little bit vulnerable, and it's possible that this person will have a crush back on you, who knows? But even if they don't, you're learning how to manage having a crush on somebody even better. Like, that's something we always have to return to. And it's sound like, I don't know, maybe your friends just haven't worked on that, and so you're just hearing their riffing off of it. I would say, yeah, like, just don't talk to them. Keep a journal, even if it makes you feel like a little bit like young, like, just journal about it.
I mean, I do feel like, why not try like some light kind of pushing against some of the comments that your friends are making? Because if it's making you feel uncomfortable, or if like it feels like it's not
Yeah.
relevant, or like you need, because that'll also help you. It'll help you face parts of yourself actually as well that kind of allow some of these behaviors, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like they're okay with it. So they're not trying to date her, but they have a crush. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And then if you meet someone else, you'll get a crush somewhere else, and that just is the rhythm of things until you get past that to something else if you want a long-term thing, which not everybody does. So that sounds cool. It sounds like you've got a good read of the situation. But yeah, if you ever want to, I still do recommend journaling, though. It's like, just talk to yourself about it. That's extremely valuable. We should all talk to ourselves more, like, legitimately. That should have never been called crazy. I mean, if you're talking to like the Martians, okay, sure. But like, if you're just talking to yourself, it's fine. Okay, I think I'm done. I think this is the end of the stream because, first of all, my voice needs rest, and it's 1 minute to go. Okay, so I talked about my theory a bunch. I'm gonna work on it some more. Be open to, yeah, the whole triangle thing. Like, just try the new things, old things, all things, do things. I swear it's a thing. If there's any questions, you can always address them to me in the Discord about how to do it. But okay, I think that's it. I'm done. Any closing thoughts?
Face the world, people.
Yeah, face the world. There you go. Face the world, and then face yourself too. Okay, all right, bye.
All right.
And I stop.
Good timing.
I'm not crazy, you're crazy. They put me in a room. There were mice there. The mice drove me crazy. I don't know. I can't remember that. Okay.